all, make sure you have the music pulled up on your screen so you can reference it as you're going along. We're going to be looking at a drum set part today, and the drum set staff is like any other music staff. There are 5 lines and 4 spaces. 2 vertical lines indicate that it's a non-pitched staff. It means that those notes don't represent specific pitches. The C here is for common time, or 4/4 time. These vertical lines here with the dots are repeat signs. That means to repeat that segment of 2 measures 4 times. Therefore, you end up with a total of 8 measures. So the top set of notes is the hi-hat or the cymbal. The next one down would be your snare drum, and the lowest note there would be the bass drum or the kick drum. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and make a template in our GarageBand menu here. So we're going to go to Track and do Show Track Info. That's going to bring up our various software instruments. So let's find a drum kit here. Today we're going to go with a pop kit. There are a couple of different drum kits that you can use. You also want to have the keyboard out so I can show you what notes you're going to use. So let's go here to keyboard. We'll pull that up. You can also enlarge that by sliding that open there. So let's test a couple of sounds here. Okay, so if you want to identify which keys are being seen, if you're playing in the low region of the keyboard, there we go. We have to slide down this octave register until we get what we need. So you've got bass drum, which is played by the note C, snare drum, played by the note E, and the hi-hat cymbal is played by the note F sharp. And we'll get into the note names a little bit later. So let's go back to our PDF for just a moment. And what we want to do is separate the rhythm into 2 tracks. You might be able to play it in 1 track, but for the purposes of this lesson, we're going to go ahead and split it into 2 tracks. So let's start with a bass drum and snare drum together. You have 2 types of note values here. The quarter note is represented by the note head with the stem here on beats 1, 2, and 4. The bass drum plays 2 eighth notes. This is the other note value here. 2 eighth notes on the 3rd beat, and 8 notes are twice as fast as quarter notes. So notes that are beamed together makes them go twice as fast. So the pattern represented here by the bass drum and snare drum is something like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, so on and so forth. Now I need an 8-measure loop. I have 2 measures in front of me. If I can do those 2 measures successfully, I'll just go ahead and copy that region 3 extra times, and then I'll have a total of 8 bars. Let's go back to our GarageBand screen. So now we've established what keys we're going to use. Next thing we want to do is set our metronome. For this project, I'm going to suggest approximately 72, somewhere between 72 and 80 beats a minute. So we're going to use our tempo slider here. Set that to 72, and here it says 4/4 time signature. And what we want to do is go ahead and set this count in, which is under the control drop-down. The count in is going to give us 4 beats to give us a heads up as to what our tempo is and when we should start recording. To record, you can either press the red record button down here or the R on the keyboard as a shortcut. So we'll go ahead and go with R on the keyboard. Let's do our bass drum and snare drum together. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop there as I only need a couple of good measures. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to double click, and I'm going to bring up my editor down here, and I will stretch that view. I'll actually reduce the view just a little bit in the slider so you can see how these are represented. So here is your ruler for your measures. The numbers are the beginnings of these measures. So measure 1 starts here, measure 2, and so on and so forth. So when we quantize this region or we edit it for timing, we want to use the fastest note value, which is our 8th note. So the computer is going to lock to this grid with what it thinks I'm meant to play. Because it wasn't perfect, we want to make it sound, we want to make the timing as good as it can be. So we're going to go to here to note timing, quantize, and we're going to do the 1/8 note. And that should lock our timing in. So let's listen to what we have. Okay, so I'm happy with what we've got here. So what I'm going to do is hold down Option, and I'm going to copy this region by dragging it over a few extra times here. That gives me a total of 8 measures. Now music is durational, so we've got to go to the end of the 8th measure, which is also the beginning of the 9th measure. So when we talk about beats, we're talking about moments in time, but we're also talking about the space between that moment and the next beat. So it's happening now, but it's also durational. So we want to kind of think about that as well. Now we need an additional track. So we go to lower left-hand corner. We're going to add a software instrument when we want MIDI. So let's add another layer, another track, and we're going to use this for the hi-hat. So let's hit return on our keyboard. That takes the cursor back to the beginning. Let's go over here and select a pop kit for drumming. And again, we're going to want to use F sharp for the hi-hat. Now this one is a different note value, so let's check this out. So here our hi-hat's going to be 16th notes. And you know that because there's 2 beams that are connecting the note. Anytime you add another beam, it speeds up the rhythm by double. So 8th notes had 1 beam, and those were 2 beats per measure. Now we're going to 16th notes, which are even faster than 8th notes. So it takes 16 16th notes to make up a measure. So it's going to be 4 per beat. 1 E enda, 2 E enda, 3 E enda, 4 E enda. So we're going to go ahead and layer that over the top, and we'll focus on the first 2 measures, and then we'll just go ahead and fix it and then loop it, and then we'll have our recording. So back to the beginning, I'll leave my count in. If I wanted to record it without the bass drum and snare drum, I could just mute that track, but I'll go ahead and leave it on because I think it's going to help me. So again, here I'll hit R for record, and we'll be off and running. Okay, so we've got a track here and exactly what we need. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do for instructional purposes, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let's say I was particularly unhappy with that. And I'm actually going to go a little bit into the 3rd bar because I want to talk about splitting regions. So I'm going to start again. Okay, and by design I went into that 3rd measure because, again, I want to show you how to split regions. So I place the cursor where I want to make a split in the region, and then I'm going to go to the Edit drop-down, and go ahead and move that out of the way. I'm going to go to the Edit drop-down once I've selected my clip and hit Split. Then I'm going to deselect by clicking in this gray area. Then I'm going to select the region that I want and hit Delete. Then I've got just the 2 measures I want. Now I double-click. And again, I want to quantize to the fastest note rhythm, or fastest note value. In this case, will be 16th notes. So I'm going to quantize 16th notes. Listen to it before I option drag it. Okay, good. So I have what I want now. I'm going to hold down, I'm going to highlight, hold down option, and drag. And now I have 8 measures, and if I want to listen to it at a faster tempo, I can always do that as well. So let's speed it up, just for demonstration purposes, to 103 beats per minute. And so on and so forth. So I feel good about this one. Hopefully you picked up a couple of tips, and that's going to do it for MicroLesson 1.